Karim Lakhani is Professor and a Fellow at Harvard Business School. He's co-founder of Harvard Business School's digital initiative. He's worked with NASA, he's worked with Mozilla, he's worked with countless others, and he's an author as well. So in terms of finding an expert we could really call upon to help us out with this, Karim Lakhani seemed like the obvious person to turn to. So Karim, I would say good afternoon, but I believe for you it's good morning, isn't it?
Yes, it's good morning here, and good afternoon to everybody there. In honor of our UK audience, I've got a picture I took in London, 2 months ago when I was there in February.
Cool photo. You took that?
I took it. Yeah, I took it.
Fantastic. So it looks like London, but you're actually speaking to us from
Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yeah, near Boston.
Excellent. Well, look, a huge welcome and good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got a lot to learn about. We've got a lot to ask you about. But I suppose initially, could you just let us know in more detail than I'm able to, or what the nature of your specialism is? What do you do there at Harvard?
Yeah, so I've been at the business school for 15 years, and I focus on technology and innovation, and really innovation management. And in that journey, have done two significant types of research. One has been around crowdsourcing and open innovation, and how crowds can be put to use to solve the toughest problems in science, technology, engineering, medicine. And then also thinking a lot about the emergence of platforms and how platforms are changing the landscape of the economy and businesses. And both of these streams came together in this book because as we were doing our crowdsourcing research, we started to come across a lot of AI and machine learning solutions to solve the problems for our partners at NASA or Harvard Medical School. And then interestingly enough, when we started doing research on platforms, a big part of how platforms excelled was through network effects and through data. And they were leading in analytics and AI in their application. And so seeing those two things independently merge became the reason why this book came about and my research streams.
So when you say network effects there, for those of us unfamiliar with that term, what do you mean by network effects?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, network effects is a very simple concept which says that the value of something increases. The value of something increases, the utility of something increases as more and more users start to use it. So like a very simple example is this pen that I'm holding in my hand. This pen has a fixed utility for us, right? It helps me write things, and the value remains the same, right? The pen is the pen. Now, even if all of us had the same pen, the utility of the pen to all of us would still be the same, right? The value would be the same. But there are products and services whose value increases itself as the number of users increases. So for example, you imagine a messaging app between you and I is fairly useless, because I might message you once a year maybe, or once a month. But if everybody has a messaging app, then the value of it increases exponentially. And so that's what's known as the network effect, where the value of something increases as the number of users increase. Many of these platforms have that, of course, and it's part of their design, but also underneath it is the data on the usage, which helps drive the AI side of things as well.
Sure. So in terms of setting the scene about the state of AI right now, how would you describe that? Are all companies embracing AI at the same sort of rate? Is the revolution firmly underway, or is there still huge variance in the way it's being approached and treated?
Yeah, look, I think many of us, carry AI in our pockets with these smartphones, right? And so already, what's going on is that that many of the services and products that we use today are AI enabled in all of our consumer platform interactions. If some of you are using Ocado as a grocery delivery service, they are heavily using AI throughout their processes, both in their warehouses and their supply chain management. Mm-hmm. So to most of us, AI is invisible. We don't actually see it. But most of us are entertained by concepts of AI that emerge in Star Trek and in Star Wars and so forth, or HAL, in the sense of this omniscient machine that can answer any question you want. the reality is that AI today is a range of very small, narrow algorithms that have been put together at scale. And so when you upload a photo on Facebook and Facebook recognizes who's in that picture, that's AI working at it. When Amazon makes you a recommendation to you about potentially what books you may want to read next after you read my book, right? That's an AI system working away at it. And so AI is pervasive. But I think what's going on is that we see at the moment a divergence. There's a set of companies that are AI native, digital native, and are rapidly expanding the use cases. And then a set of companies that are just now getting the head around saying, oh, I need to be deploying much more data-driven, automated decision-making in my operations and also my business model, and I need to begin. And so we see a divergence between firms that are just at a very different level in terms of their use of AI versus the rest of the economy, which is just now waking up to it and saying, oh my goodness, we need to start to incorporate these in our policies.
Sure. Do you have any examples you could show us of this? The different...
Yeah, absolutely. So let me. I'm going to share my screen, and then we can sort of go through some of these slides. So again, this is a book that I co-wrote with my good friend and co-author and colleague at Harvard Business School, Marco Iansiti. And one of the things, of course, we want to be clear about is are sort of the definitions of AI. And so one definition from computer science is machines that can think and act in a way that matches or surpasses human intelligence. This is the Star Wars computers, right? And that's not a strong AI. But there's another definition of AI, which is weak AI, right? Any activities computers are able to perform that humans once performed. Okay, and this definition actually is what we go after. That our sense is that weak AI, very narrow, constrained algorithms doing one thing and doing one thing really well, can be scaled up in ways that can radically transform a company's business and operating model. And so let me show you what that looks like. One of my favorite examples, it comes from China, this company called JD Digits, which started to do facial recognition for pigs. And you go like, why would you ever do facial recognition for pigs? Well, what they realized is that farmers in China, sort of livestock and pig farming in China is a very big business. And farmers in China need insurance for their livestock. But it's really hard to know if you as a farmer choose to insure only half your livestock and not the other half, the insurance company doesn't know which pigs have actually been insured, right? Unless you did some kind of a genetic test. So what they did instead is they said, we're going to do facial recognition for pigs, use off-the-shelf facial recognition software, applied it towards pigs, and we're able to then come up with a range of offerings that insured the farmers, added a whole new insurance product in the marketplace, but then took that one algorithm and started to apply it to a range of settings. So now they do pig counting in a pen, they look at feeding habits, they can estimate the health of a pig by taking pictures, and then tell the farmer when the pig is ready for the next stage in their career. And all of this happens to be all a range of weak AI algorithms that are strung together. Now, JD Digits is not going to get rich and famous selling pig facial recognition software, but they will get rich and famous because now all of a sudden they not only have an insurance product to sell to the farmers, but they can actually build a whole marketplace because now they can tell you about the health of the pigs, they can recommend feed for you, they can recommend places to take the pigs for slaughter, and so on and so forth, which are well above and beyond what a facial recognition software might do. So that's one example. Another example.
On there, there's the first thing you mentioned that distinction between weak and strong. So we're seeing a really tangible example of that weak AI idea. This is a task that a human being could do, but would take so long, would have its drawbacks.
Exactly, and would not scale, right? Imagine having census takers for pigs and counting the number of pigs you have.
Sure.
Right, it's going to be very difficult. Here, you can now do this in a way that's not possible before, and when you can do that, you can literally change your business model and the operating model that you go to market with.
I see. Right.
Yeah. Another good example of this is something that I did last year. Here's a paper we published in JAMA Oncology. So JAMA is the leading journal for medicine, and this is the oncology branch, where we used crowdsourcing to generate algorithms to do radiation therapy targeting. What we were able to do in basically 10 weeks of work for $55,000 is create software that's as good as the average Harvard-trained radiation oncologist, okay, to be able to delineate cancers in lung cancer images and to be able to create a radiation therapy targeting plan. Now, the thing to note is, I'm one of the co-authors on this project. The last time I took biology was in 10th grade, and I was not an awesome student. That's why I became a social scientist and an engineer. But the other thing to note also is that the winners of this contest actually took software from self-driving car systems, right, and applied it to medicine. And this shift of people doing this is a great way to again think about weak AI. The software does one thing and one thing really well. It does edge detection, right? It finds edges between good tumor and bad tumor, good tissue and bad tumors, right? And that's what you need to be able to do. But that's the same problem in cars, and self-driving cars, because you need to know, when does a grandma end and when does a road start, right? You need to be able to detect that, know where the poodle is versus where the fire hydrant is, so you know how to dodge objects in the road. The same concept can be applied here, but this one piece of software that does one thing really well that can be applied. So here's another example of weak AI working in this way. And what we see then is that when we put this all together, you just imagine that these algorithms are narrow, they're brittle, but they do one thing really well, is you can now start to apply them across a range of contexts and a range of settings and start to change what you do as a company. So my favorite example of this, again, comes from China. I think China in many ways is the most advanced in their use of AI. The best AI research is actually coming from US and England and the UK and Europe, but the best applications, putting them to use, is actually happening in China. So this notion of Ant Financial that came from Alibaba. Alibaba is the Amazon equivalent. They set up an escrow service to do payments, and they get lots of people using their escrow service, and they have data on those payments. And basically, within the scope of a decade or so, they are able to scale from 20 million users to 1.2 billion users, right? With only 10,000 people supporting the entire enterprise. So 10,000 people serving 1.2 billion of financial services users. And they not only offer escrow services, they offer a credit scoring system, they offer a banking platform, they offer money market funds, all those kind of things being put together. And this company is amazing because now all of a sudden they're global, they're worth about $150 billion and closely approaching the valuations of the top financial services companies in the world, all with just 10,000 employees driving the use of AI across. So, some interesting things here. They have a 310 banking product. So you want to apply for a bank account with them. It takes you 3 minutes to fulfill this on the app. 1 minute for approval, and 1 second for approval. So 3 minutes to submit, 1 second for approval, and 0 human intervention, right?
At this point, we've moved from that substitution of human effort into actually surpassing what a human being backed process could realistically do.
Exactly. Another cool example from them is that they have all this data about consumer behavior. And they realized that young women were breaking their cell phones quite a bit. And they were wondering about that. And what they realized is that it was actually young women who bought tight jeans that were breaking their cell phones quite a bit. So then they were able to offer insurance products for young women buying tight jeans to then insure their mobile phones, right? A very targeted view of what, right? And that insight you would only get if you had automation and data available to see patterns, and then to be able to rapidly come up with a solution.
Sure.
So the sense we have right now is that what's happening is that AI, digitization and transformation is changing what we call both business models, how you create value and how you capture value, but also the operating model of companies, how you achieve scale, how you serve more and more customers, how you achieve scope, how you offer them different things, and how you learn and you improve. And our sense is, and in the book we outline this quite a bit, and the articles you got, is how both there's innovation through AI through weak AI on both business models and operating models put together. And Ant is, of course, is a really good example of this, because what Ant does is that it has built a platform, so the value of Ant increases as more and more users start to use Ant, and more merchants come onto Ant, and more service providers come onto Ant. So this is clearly a network effect story. But then Ant has basically put humans at the edge of the system, but all the main transactions and processes are fully automated, right? And so humans don't come in the middle of those processes. We basically digitize those processes. And I think Satya Nadella has sort of said this. AI is the new runtime that is going to shape all that we do. Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. And if you sort of think about what's going on at a company like Ant, at the core is data, software, algorithms, APIs, and they sit together to enable the system to work. And the underlying driver of all of this is this virtuous cycle, where as you get usage, you get data. As you get more data, you get better algorithms. As you get better algorithms, you get better services. As you get better services, you get more usage and more data, and so on and so forth. Many of these companies are set up this way to be able to drive this type of virtuous cycle. And that's why when you sort of think about these large online platforms, they keep coming up with more and more services because they have better algorithms. And as you use their services more, they get more data on you, and they can then use that to actually drive better algorithms. So they're always sort of thinking about this in this way. And the perspective we have is that core to the inside the firm is an AI factory, a factory that has industrialized analytics and decision-making. So if you sort of think about it right now, in most of our organizations, analytics and decision-making AI is a craft-based business that happens on Excel sheets, right? We have Excel sheets, somebody does some analysis, converts it into PowerPoint, and then 2 weeks later it goes to top management and they have a look and they make a decision. Or maybe it's on some dashboard, but it's a finely crafted analysis of some data set. The AI factory is set up in a way that basically industrializes the process. You spend a lot of investments on your data pipelines, making sure that the data coming in is a source of advantage, both internal operations and external data. You rely on algorithms to allow you to make decisions and make predictions about the future, and then you invest in an infrastructure that can put them out at scale. And this AI factory then basically powers the operating model core of a company. And so this is what we sort of see as the core shift happening inside of companies, where both your business model and the operating model is changing.
That sounds like quite a challenging shift you've described there, quite a cultural issue, isn't it? Because people making big decisions, huge business decisions based on how to deploy resources, how to market services, what to do. Taking those decisions away from that spreadsheet visibility you mentioned, away from the C-suite and into one of these AI factories you've described, that sounds like quite a scary step.
Yeah, well, it's not just big decisions. It can be anything. Like, for example, just imagine, again, this sort of bank loan approval, right? Right now, we have lots of bank managers that look the customers in the eye and then, have some data and then use their gut or intuition to decide on somebody's worthiness to get a loan. Well, that doesn't scale when you want, like what we've seen in the US, right? Now, all of a sudden, we need to provide loans to millions of people, right? Because of the coronavirus epidemic. And we don't have any good system to scale in this kind of a way. right? And so it's not just the big decisions, but micro decisions along the way. Imagine like if you watch, all of us are watching, binging on Netflix these days, and Netflix has to look at you and decide, what does Karim like to watch? And what's the next recommendation they need to make? There's no human being that's making the recommendation. That decision has been given to the algorithms. And so the whole shift in how we organize ourselves is, I think, the foundational thing that is quite different than the way we're set up today. Absolutely. So that is the what I imagine is that the organizational shift to adapt to the power of the AI factory is going to be the biggest constraint in the organizations that are trying to adopt this. So let me just continue with that, and then we can open up for some questions as well. So look, what we see happening in the economy is the following: that we have network effects. So many of these platforms at the bottom of this graph are built up in a way, as we discussed, the value of their platforms increases as users increase, right? And then because they have data and analytics, right, you can sharpen the value curve. The impact of AI is to actually make that value curve even sharper, right? And that's why it's no surprise that all these companies, Tencent, Alibaba, Google, Amazon, Facebook, have led the way in developing AI algorithms, because they have all this data and have innovated in trying to utilize this data to increase their value. And the story that we see today in the economy, and I'll link this back to the current crisis that many of us are living in, is that most of us are set up as traditional product businesses, where the value that we offer to customers increases initially, but then tapers off as the number of users increases. Versus, and we're set up in these organizations that are highly focused and siloed, right? We do one thing and we do one thing really well in our organizations. Like, for example, even in my case of the Harvard Business School, we're extremely siloed. We have an MBA product, we have an executive education product, we have an online product, we have a publishing product, right? And none of those organizations talk to each other. The data are scattered across all those organizations. Right? If I was a student at HBS doing my MBA and I showed up to exec ed would not know what courses I took, who were my favorite professors, or know that, in fact, I read these articles on HBR. That's all completely siloed. And so that is the nature of most of the organizations that we live in. An interesting statistic I heard from the former CIO of Goldman Sachs is that they did an inventory of their investment banking business, and they realized they had 30,000 employees and 90,000 databases, right? So it's all scattered throughout the enterprise. And what is happening, though, is that these systems are now colliding with these digital businesses, right? And these digital businesses have increasing returns to the number of users, increasing value. And this collision is inherent now in the Merit versus Airbnb conversation, Ford versus Waymo, self-driving cars, right? HSBC and Ant Financial. And this collision is what we are seeing over and over again in a range of industries, from pharmaceuticals to financial services to automotive and transportation. And by the way, this is also the story today of what we see happening in COVID, in the response, right? Where COVID as a disease is an exponentially increasing process, where it stays flat for a long time, and then it increases in an exponential way. Versus the NHS or the US healthcare system, which has a fixed capacity. And what happens is that most people in the fixed capacity system don't understand what happens under exponential processes. And this stark realization of this, we've all now seen globally around COVID. But by the way, this is the same story we see happening inside of the economy and companies that are facing the digital revolution and are faced with AI first competitors.